Hey guys, Graham and Chris back here with you again on Out of Left Field. We are brought to you by the Grueling Truth Network, where legends speak. Love being a part of these guys and being a part of your week every time on Sunday when we kick it off, come out. We are 1 week away, Battle, from the ball being put in play on the official start of the 2017 Major League Baseball season. You have already told me that you are going to bastardize Chase Field, the home of the Diamondbacks, by your daughter wearing all Giants regalia when she shows up at the field for opening day. So, How are you feeling?
I'm feeling good. I have tickets to opening day. How could I be feeling bad? And yes, my daughter will be wearing all Giants regalia when we get there.
I'd appreciate you feeling bad that I couldn't go. I mean, it would have been nice to, Oh yeah, mind.
there's a moment of sympathy there. But I'm over it.
You're a liar. But yeah, you're over. Thanks. It was here. It was fleeting. It's gone. So
you have a jersey, hat, pair of Vans that have Giants logos all over them. It's pretty awesome.
Well, the good thing is she's not in L.A. Otherwise, she might get beaten by senseless people. But speaking, it's funny as we kind of make transitions into things, we don't really see where they're coming. But as we kind of get the ball put in play on the final show before the start of the regular season, we talk about people getting kind of, punched in the face and hurt. The puncher, Rougned Odor, is in the news, not because he has cold-cocked somebody else right in the jaw and knocked with sunglasses and made a fool of himself, but he is in the news because he has reached an agreement with his team, the Texas Rangers, on a 6-year, $49.5 million extension for a guy who's 23 years old and has not been up in the big leagues for very long. This is, I don't want to say surprising, because I think the extension makes a ton of sense. He's a young kid. He's fiery, great in the middle of the field, in the infield, which is something we'll get to in just a second. But we are seeing, and this happened with the White Sox too, with Tim Anderson, who got a multi-million-dollar, multi-year deal after less than one full season of service. And we discussed last week, about Chris Bryant and guys who are arbitration and are making a very small amount based on what their production has been for teams like the Cubs. But I don't think you have any issue. Obviously, he played for Venezuela and WBC, but, dude, we got a guy who hit 271 with 33 dingers and drove in 88, plus a punch to the face of Jose Bautista and a 798 OPS.
That's 34 dingers in my opinion. That should be on the stat line. No, I don't have a problem with this. I think it's a big payday for a kid who's only been up for 2.5 years. But he doesn't fall into the same sort of restrictions that the Cubs have Chris Bryant under. So there's not a whole lot you can say about it. He has his own set of circumstances. Chris Bryant has his own set of circumstances. And Rougned Odor was able to take advantage of that and get $49.5 million, which, in my opinion, I think that he deserves because he's a darn good ball player. Look at him since he got called up in 2014. He's got 58 home runs, almost 200 ribbies, and he's crossed the plate 182 times himself. So he puts himself in a position to score. He knocks other guys in. He's a pretty consistent guy as far as the bat goes. He's been within 20 points of the same he's been within 10 or so points of the same 265 average that he's held for his entire Major League career for the last 3 years, and he's only getting more and more powerful. His first season with the Rangers, he hit 9 home runs. His second season, he hit 16, doubled that up, and now he's doubled it up again at 33. I doubt he's going to double it up this year, but to see him get back into the 30s is not something that I think is unlikely.
No, I agree, and let's not forget either. He snagged 14 bags last year, and no one's looking at him as being a guy who's really he's not going to be a speed demon, but he's a guy who is also he's a hard-nosed player, so you're going to get those hard slides in, everything's going to be clean, but it might be just enough to get under some team, some player's skin, or make them think twice about hugging the bag. Granted, we have the bona fide slide rule, which is a topic for another day of how well is it enforced, how much sense does it make. I think it'll be a better rule, a better enforced rule now that we're into, that we're deeper into having that as a rule on the books. If we were talking about rules that I think need to be altered or figured out, it's probably going to be the running lane rule for a runner coming into home plate with a catcher, because trying to go into replay and figure out what that is a whole different story. But, yeah, man, this kid, again, played for Venezuela in the WBC, fiery. His team, what I want to see is he gets older. And obviously, 23 is, that was a long time ago for you and me. At 23, he still has a lot of time to mature as a ball player, as a person. But I think that he definitely he's the mainstay of that team. Okay. Jonathan Lucroy has said that extension talks with him have been tabled. The team reached an agreement with backup catcher Robinson Chirinos, but Yu Darvish hasn't been extended. We know that Lucroy has not yet. You've got a lot of young guys on that team, like Parra. I'm drawing a blank on who I'm thinking about right now.
Fernando Parra, is that you're talking about?
I believe so. Yeah, and then obviously, they have a couple of solid young players on that team. But I think at the end of the day, when guys like Adrian Beltre really are, obviously they're going to be the main leaders right now, but he's getting older, man. He's almost 40. He's not going to be up there. I was thinking of Jurickson Profar. That was the name that I was having a hard time. And Joey Gallo. That's where I was just drawing a blank. But the thing with guys like Beltre is they don't have a lot of time left. And this is going to be Odor's team. And this 6-year extension plus a 7th-year option, to me, really shows kind of like what we saw in the NBA with the Spurs and Kawhi Leonard and those guys, that they're going to start handing over the leadership reins to him. The big thing is if the Rangers want to stay competitive in that division, obviously with the Astros adding a ton of stuff, and we'll get to our picks for all of our division titles coming up here at the tail end of the show, we're going to need to see Odor grow and mature as a leader. And you and I both know from our time in the Army just how important leadership is. And leadership can be taken differently in a sport compared to in a military environment. But nonetheless, leadership is a huge thing in a clubhouse, and they are going to look to him very soon as the voice and the heartbeat and the leader of that ball club.
Right. And when you're talking about him having a lot of time to mature, I think one of the things that we're going to see as he starts to get older is we're going to see him start to take a little bit more time in the box, not swing from the heels so much. He is kind of a swing from the heels kind of guy. He's not a very patient hitter. Struck out 135 times last season, only walked 19 times. So I know we harp on that a lot, but that strikeout to walk ratio is a big deal when you're talking about how effective a guy is at the plate. And when you have a guy who comes to the plate 605 times and strikes out 135 of them, but only gets on base via the walk 19, that speaks directly to his patience and his ability to work a count, which is something that young kids tend to have a problem with. So what I hope to see from Rougned Odor is for him to keep that batting average high, keep that home run power number high, and then just kind of start creeping that on-base percentage up as he starts drawing more walks, working counts full, things like that.
And I think probably the best example of that in the game today, in my opinion, is Anthony Rizzo. The guy who gets in the box, he's looking to drive the ball, but when he's in a 2-strike count, he chokes up a little bit. His whole idea is to find a hole and spray the ball, just get on base. He's not looking to drive a shot. If he gets a groove one, he can take advantage, great. But his entire approach will change based on the situation, and that is something you don't see very often. It's not of a very mature ball player. That's why Rizzo's going to be great for years to come, and it's something that I think that if more of his teammates begin to pick that up, God help the rest of the other 29 teams in Major League Baseball, because if multiple guys on that Cubs roster can pick up that mentality like Rizzo has, it is going to be a long road to hoe for any team that is going to try and unseat them in the next several seasons. Now, you and I talked about, obviously, with him being at Venezuela, WBC ended. the USA won, and I felt like you and I were more excited about this than the players were. It felt like to me, and I didn't get a chance to watch the entire end of the game, but I caught the tail end of it. I obviously saw a lot of the coverage. Is that guys just, and I get this isn't the World Series, but there just wasn't the same fire, the same, I guess I don't want to say patriotic encompassment, if that's a word, but you kind of know what I'm getting. The way that Puerto Rico, the way that the DR, their whole country kind of rallies around that, because it's the one time where, yes, you might have a guy you like on this team and a guy you like on this team, but this is one chance where, every player from your country who has some lineage, some tie to where you are from, and Latin America has become such a huge part of the baseball culture. It gets put on full display, and you could see, from the cheers and the music and, people that, have trumpets and maracas. I mean, all these different cultural identities that were there. And then the USA won, which I think is fantastic, but I don't think neither you nor I were that impressed by the way they seem to have felt. And then several of the comments that have been made from Adam Jones, which is one that we're not really going to talk about, but Ian Kinsler really struck a negative chord with us and kind of makes me scratch my head as to what the hell was he thinking. And, I maybe he just doesn't get what this actually means to other countries, in their fandom.
Right. And so I've had a little bit of a problem with the United States and the WBC since the inception of the tournament. We've played 4 WBC tournaments now. Japan won the first 2 back-to-back. Even Japan, who is considered to probably be one of the most reserved on-field baseball countries, has a pretty serious amount of emotion going into these WBC contests. But the U.S. has never really put forth a team that I think was a serious attempt at winning a WBC. I think this year was really the first time they put together a team that seemed serious. And even then, some of the really great players obviously bowed out again, decided not to play. But we did put together a really, really strong club. And I think it's great that they won, but you're right. They didn't impress me with their emotion. They didn't impress me with their excitement to have done something that represents the United States as a country on an international stage. People say, we call the Fall Classic the World Series. That's a misnomer. The only way you can really call it a World Series is if a team from Canada is actually playing in it. That's the Major League Baseball championships.
It's the same misnomer, in every sport. Oh, they're world champions. No, they're champions of their sport. And granted, the sports here, is, aside from soccer, but I think the main, probably at least the 3 major, the NBA, the NFL, and Major League Baseball, and hockey's still probably the I think where you get everyone that wants to come play in the NHL. Granted, it's much more regional like baseball, but everything is a world championship, and no, it's a championship that you win in a sport, in a league that is based solely in one country, or at least on one continent, and that's in the U.S.
Last time I checked, I've never seen the World Series champions, say the Cubs or the Giants or the Cardinals or whoever, fly across the Pacific Ocean and go play the champions of the Japanese leagues.
Right. At best, you got
determine a winner there.
At best, you got was when the Blue Jays won in the 90s, and that was just okay. Well, it's a team in Toronto, still part of the same league. But I want to read these comments or this quote for our listeners, and I'm going to give you time to react because a lot of times you sometimes give more a deeper thought to some things than I do, and I think we both have had similar feelings. But I liked a lot of the way that you voiced this, and I'll kind of jump in when you're done and kind of give my side or my agreements. But Ian Kinsler said this at the end of the WBC and the U.S. win. He said, quote, "I hope kids watching the WBC can watch the way we play the game and appreciate the way we play the game as opposed to the way Puerto Rico plays or the Dominican plays. That's not taking anything away from them. That just wasn't the way we were raised. They were raised differently, and to show emotion and passion when you play. We do show emotion, we do show passion, but we just do it in a different way." End quote. The beginning of that really set me in a very negative place reading the rest of these comments, and I'm not surprised if our listeners are as well. And we'd love to have your comments on this, what you think about what Kinsler said. You can reach us at OO Left Field on Twitter and Out of Left Field, hosted by Chris and Graham on Facebook, and also on the Out of Left Field community page on Facebook as well.
So the issue I have with this statement, well, there are a lot of issues that I have with this statement, but the first issue that I have with this statement is when he says, "I hope kids watching the WBC can watch the way we play the game as opposed to the way they play the game." This speaks to, decades, centuries of American ideology that the way America does something is the right way, and the way that these other people do it is somehow barbaric, right? That in some way, by showing that huge emotion on the field, that these guys are being somehow lowered by that action. And that's just not true, right? I mean, and it's not true that Americans don't show passion when they're playing the game. Anybody who was watching that championship game and watched Stroman walk off the field knows that those guys are showing emotion. Adam Jones, when he hit that shot or when he stole that home run, I mean, that's an emotional moment for him, right? And he showed it. He was very emotional. Just because Ian Kinsler's a stick in the mud doesn't mean that that's how everybody else has to be. And that doesn't mean that that's
I just want to say that this is Chris and my both, as we are both now over the age of 30, for our young listeners, this is our get off my lawn moment. Okay? Yes. I'm sorry. This is us discussing Ian Kinsler's get off my lawn moment. I think we're actually both kind of okay with the, as he kind of those guys coming over on the lawn and having a little bit of fun.
Is there a right way and a wrong way to play baseball from a fundamental standpoint? Absolutely. Is there a right way and a wrong way to play baseball from an emotional standpoint? Definitely not. Everybody is going to be different in how they display their emotions, whether it's being excited about something or being upset about something. Now, that's not to say that people should just let their emotions run free, or that people should allow their anger to get the best of them, like Rougned Odor and Jose Bautista, like Bryce Harper every time he strikes out, jaw-jacking at an umpire. There's a right and a wrong there, but I would argue that those things are fundamental, right, as opposed to emotion. I mean, they come from an emotional place, but there's a fundamental right and wrong between saying, hey, was that really a strike, and saying, hey, that FFFFF wasn't a strike. Right.
So what you're saying, and I want to clarify so I get this, and I think I'm picking you up here, is that you are 100%, obviously as a player, I understand that, you are 100% okay with the emotion, any of the emotion. It's a matter of how a player, how a manager handles that emotion in dealing with a situation with somebody, be it another player, be it an opponent, be it an umpire. It's how they channel that emotion and that whatever it is, anger, joy, rage, whatever, where do they channel it and what do they do with it? That's where you think it's a line, the player, it's a player issue, obviously not a league issue.
Right.
Or a country issue. And
don't get me wrong, even negative emotion. If Bryce Harper didn't do it on every at-bat, and it was something that mattered, like if we're talking about a World Series game where they're down by a couple of runs and Bryce Harper doesn't get a close call and he wants to turn and have an emotional outburst, that's fine. You expect that in that situation. Or if the manager wants to come out and he wants to get into an umpire's face, I don't advocate getting into umpire's face, but that's part of the game. And in a
how many times do we hear it's to fire up I'm going to come out there, I'm going to fire up the guys, and a lot of times it's, hey, you just got to toss me. And we go back to Anthony Rizzo, where last year he was caught per se on camera or on mic apologizing to Angel Hernandez, who is an umpire that is highly disliked by the majority of fans. He's looked as one of the worst in baseball. And I don't know him personally. I've heard nice things about him off the field. He's very thin-skinned on the field. He said, hey, he tossed his bat on what he thought was a ball 4 pitch. It was called a strike. And he said, hey, I wasn't trying to show you up. He apologized, and there's a class there. So like with him or a guy like Joey Votto, who is very respectful of umpires, we saw him blow up twice in the last couple of years. When that begins to happen, when they have a moment, you're like, okay, something's probably going on here. Either the grind of a rough season, like Altuve last year got dumped for a called strike 3, and he had told the media that, you know what, it's been a rough stretch right now. I'm probably about to get tossed because I'm kind of starting to boil over here. But it's those guys when it happens, like you said, in a controlled, when they're more controlled and reserved, and then there's a blow up, it goes almost further in. I don't want to say helping their cause, but you can find a respect, or it kind of makes you wonder, as an umpire, at least for me, go, okay, did I miss something? If this coach never comes out to me, and now he's coming out, did I miss something? Did something happen that I didn't see? And it makes you think, and I think that's where you're going with this, that there's a respect there that comes from being able to control those emotions, and that can actually take you a lot further into, your interactions with players and umpires. I think it's why catchers, we have seen so many catchers as managers, like Matheny and Girardi and those guys.
And Bochy, yeah, exactly. And why catchers, and why catchers are so effective as managers, because they know the game from that standpoint, and they have that relationship that they've built with these umpires.
Exactly.
But Kinsler's statements, in my opinion, show a severe lack of sensitivity on several scales. I won't get into whether or not these are racist statements or whether they tie into, the racial divide between players and countries, but there's a definite lack of sensitivity and respect there. I'll let other people draw their own conclusions on that, but I will say that Ian Kinsler did make an attempt to walk those statements back. A couple of days after he made those statements, he was interviewed and asked to clarify, and he said, quote, "What I said was that American kids can watch American players play, Puerto Rican kids can watch Puerto Rican players play, Venezuelan kids can watch Venezuelan guys play, and that's who they emulate. That's who they watch. That's who they want to be like. There's nothing wrong with an American kid watching a Puerto Rican player and wanting to be like them, or a Puerto Rican kid watching an American player and wanting to play that way. You should play the way you want, and the way you feel will put you in the best position to win. The way you feel the best and perform the best. Everybody is different. I play differently than a lot of my teammates on this team. I play with a little more emotion than most players during the season. Everyone has their own style. That's all I was saying." He went on to say, after Marley Rivera asked him if he deems the U.S. style to be better than the Latin American style, he did say absolutely not. That's what this tournament is for, to demonstrate the game in all walks of life all over the globe. You saw the way the Japanese players play. They play different than us. The Latin teams play different than us. Everyone should be celebrated. That's what this tournament is about, and that's why everyone loves it, because you get to see people play in front of people from their own country and the different styles of baseball. One is not better than the other. They are just different. So he really tried to take 10 steps forward and walking that back, and I think realistically all he did was kind of dig himself a little bit deeper. The thing is style of play is one thing. but emotional play doesn't vary. I mean, every country has players who are and are not emotional. Look at Yadier Molina at the end of that championship game. Yadier Molina was far more reserved in losing than guys like Angel Pagan or Manny Machado, because those guys expected to win that game. Yadier Molina is – I'm not saying that Manny Machado is not a veteran. I'm definitely not saying that Angel Pagan, 3-time world champion, is not a veteran. But those guys went into that championship game expecting to win. And Yadier Molina, as a almost 20-year veteran catcher for the St. Louis Cardinals, knows that anything can happen when you step on the field, and that when somebody wins, you just tip your cap to them. So to say that sort of emotional style is specific to one country and that these guys should watch these guys play and these kids should watch their guys play, I get you're trying to walk it back by saying there's nothing wrong with it, but why is that an issue in the first place? Why do you even have to bring that up in the first place?
My problem is that how do you walk back when you basically just said there's a problem with it, that you have a problem with it? It's fine if he had said, I hope kids watching the WBC can watch the way we play the game and appreciate it, period. But when you continue in the same breath and say, opposed to the way the Puerto Rico plays or the Dominican plays, no, not opposed. You just, if they would appreciate the way that you play, let them draw their own conclusions. It's something that I tell young umpires is, watch what I do in my mechanics. Watch guys you work with. Take the best of what you see, save it. Take what you don't like and trash it. And then take everything that you like and mold it and make it your own. And the problem here is, and we've heard discussions about this, you and I don't think we differ in opinion. I don't know if there's ever going to be a full appreciation or, kind of allowance, if you will, of, guys being able to just kind of celebrate and flip the bat or get them, kind of show that kind of emotion. But you can be emotional and you can kind of get a little bit crazy. If you hit a walk-off bomb and you come around and you flip your helmet towards the pitcher's mound and you do like what Prince Fielder did when he was in Milwaukee and you jump on the plate and everybody falls down like it was one big grenade that goes off, that's not being kind of showboat. That's not showing up your opponent a little bit, but it's accepted. So there's parts that are and there's parts that aren't. The problem is here, this was, as you said, this was a cultural championship. It was players of the same nationality, the same culture, all coming together to achieve a common goal. And how often do we see in every postseason when the Royals won, you had the antlers, the moose antlers, whatever it was. Musakas always had the actual antlers from a moose. You get the guys stirring the pot. I mean, there's all these different. You had the Rangers doing like the goggles over the eyes. I mean, there's all these kind of different things. Different hand signals and goofy crap that guys do when they get a double or get on base, whatever it is. So it's okay for guys to do that, but it's not okay to let the bat fly when you hit a jack. And I'm not saying let the bat fly and then stare at it. But if you're like, man, I caught all of that, and you flip it and then it doesn't go out, you realize you just made an ass of yourself. You might pay a price. But if it goes where you think it's going, that's over the fence, and you give it a flip and then you haul your butt around those bases, then as a pitcher, you better tip your cap and say, okay, made a mistake. I better not do it again. But I'm with you, man. This was such an insensitive comment, and I get we are in a very politically correct society today, and neither you nor I really oblige in that, because coming in the Army, I mean, race and nationality just makes things funny, and it's why we always had crude senses of humor, and we all joke with each other, but that was the beauty, is we were all kind of one big group. We were a family. Some, you like more than you do others, but you knew those guys that you were tight with, and no matter what color you were, where you were from, what part of the country, what part of the world, you could you could rag on each other, and it was cool. It was just part of your life, part of your existence, and that's what it was. So to me, Kinsler, just like you said, yes, you were raised differently to show, and to show emotion and passion when you play, but that's just it. They were raised differently. They came up in the game differently. That doesn't mean they came up wrong. It means that they're playing in a league in your country where you learn to play and you think it's wrong. And that kind of mentality needs to change.
Yeah, I agree. And I really think that Ian Kinsler made this an issue that didn't have to be an issue. These were comments that didn't need to be made, remarks that didn't need to be made. If he wanted to respond to the people who were saying that the U.S. wasn't playing with emotion, then he could have responded to that without bringing in the way other people's played and othering those people. And so I think that you and I agree that this is a situation that Ian Kinsler's gotten himself into.
And you and I both know. How much differently would the celebrations have been if Puerto Rico or the DR had won? I mean, can you imagine it would have been like a World Series. Gloves would have been flying. It would have been mayhem. And it was in this game, like when Rizzo's catching the ball to end the World Series, when Bryant's smiling as he fields it, it was just like, hey guys, all right, let's tap gloves. We won. And okay, well it almost felt like forced excitement. And there wasn't that from those countries. And that's why these comments irk me, like you said.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. Yeah. I think probably we should move on from this topic because we could go down a rabbit hole with it and I do want to say talking about that.
And I do want to say we understand that Adam Jones made comments as well about there being a parade and that they had heard that the Puerto Rican team had a parade already preset and they went out there to handle business, and Yadier Molina has heard that and has demanded an apology from Adam Jones. Whether or not it happens, I don't know. The whole parade thing was going to happen regardless, win or lose, became the whole thing. And there was this kind of this innuendo, insinuation that, oh, well, these guys thought they already had it in the bags. We had to go handle business when, and Yadi's thing is, why don't you learn the whole story about what we were going to do in our country before you go shooting your mouth off about things that you don't have all the facts on. So, yes, we know that's there, but to us, the Kinsler comments were much more, out there.
And so, in closing, what I want to say is that I hope that this doesn't turn into a situation where these insensitive comments create some sort of tension in the clubhouse with Kinsler and players on his team who are Latin American players, because that might happen. These are those sorts of comments. The comments that Adam Jones made are those sorts of comments that can start a little bit of bad blood, and you never want to see that in a clubhouse because of an international sporting competition. So, moving on, you last week said something, and I kind of co-signed to it, and I think that we deserve, as a group or as a pair, you and I deserve a little bit of a shout out, a little bit of recognition for the fact that we knew that Derek Norris.
So you want to shout yourself out on our own show?
No. I think other people should shout us out. I'm just saying that we deserve it. that we knew that Derek Norris was going to the Rays before Derek Norris knew he was going to the Rays. Derek Norris. Yeah, it makes the most sense. Derek Norris does join the Tampa Bay Rays, who did go after Matt Wieters. Obviously didn't pick him up. The Nationals did. The Nationals released Norris. Norris joins the Rays, gets a 1-year deal. The Nats are only on the hook for, what, $800K?
$688.
$688K, that 30-day pay that they owe him. And then Tampa Bay picked him up for next to nothing, $1.2 million, with an opportunity to make it $2 million if he can hit all of the
incentives
incentive levels for that contract. So Derek Norris last year, he hit 181 or 186, right. 14 bombs, 42 ribbies. I don't know that this is a Derek Norris that we're going to see hit all of these incentive levels. Assuming he doesn't, his contract itself is going to be worth less than the rookie contract or the rookie extension that Chris Bryant signed a couple of weeks ago.
Right.
And
I mean, you got to think you just signed a $4.2 million deal, and because of the way the arbitration agreements work and the off season and spring training works, is you can get dumped at a certain point and not be owed all that guaranteed contract. It's one of the few times in baseball that we've found out a guaranteed contract isn't always fully guaranteed. Now, we discussed also that, and the reason that the Nationals were looking for a catcher was because Wilson Ramos, who you and I both thought could have very easily have been the National League starter last year in the All-Star game, ended up being a backup to Buster Posey. Ended up tearing an ACL. Now, the Rays signed him this offseason, but he isn't expected back until May or June. And even then, time you get back, they're expecting him maybe to do more of a DH role than in a catching role. So from everything that I heard and what made sense, and that's kind of why I thought about this, is it made the most sense as far as playing time for him. It's a small park. It's a very odd park, very similar to kind of the Tokyo Dome, which was discussed in the WBC, of the catwalks and odd ground rules. But it's a chance for him with a relatively short porch on either side of the field to hopefully get back into a solid offensive production kind of year. After we've talked about enough, hitting 186, on base of 255, a slugging of 328. And, he had a career 30.3% strikeout rate. I mean, it's not what you want to see. And, he hit 246 with a 336 on base and a 392 slugging in 4 seasons between 12 and 15. So, he's not that far away, but you need to see that. So, for the Rays, a team who is really in the middle of a – I don't want to say a fire sale. You still have Chris Archer. You still have Odorizzi, and that's a good thing for Norris. That was where I thought it would be good for him, is to have a staff like Scherzer, like Strasburg, like Roark, like Gio, who needs to try and hopefully find something to come back to that third-place Cy Young year we saw 3 or 4 years ago. You're still going to a team with two really good pieces who are highly sought after in Jake Odorizzi and Chris Archer. You would have had Matt Moore had the Giants not snagged him at the trading deadline last year. But on a one-year deal, it works for both sides. The Rays get a good piece that could be an offensive, add good offensive pop to their lineup. And for Derek Norris, he really does now have an opportunity to show that, hey, last year's a fluke. I'm back. I'm here. I'm worth what I should have gotten. Let's get the market up, and someone sign me and pay me some cash.
Right. And if you look at it from the standpoint of the Tampa Bay Rays, this makes a tremendous amount of sense for them, because Wilson Ramos going down to an ACL tear, coming back from that as a catcher is probably more difficult than coming back from it at any other position on the field, because being in that crouch, 2 hours a game, 162 games a year is really rough on those knees. And if you look at it from the standpoint of a team that's got a guy like Wilson Ramos, who is going to come back from this ACL, I'm sure, and be strong, just maybe not this first year, if you have a Derek Norris who can fill in and he does well, good. If he does average, well, that's probably what you were going to get from an injured catcher. And if he does do average or below average, then when Wilson Ramos is strong next season, you still have him to throw in that starting slot, and Derek Norris has gone off of his one-year contract and back into free agency to see what he can find. So it makes nothing but sense.
And you paid below average cost for average performance, which, still is a win-win financially for the Rays.
Right. So this makes a tremendous amount of sense for the Rays. It makes a tremendous amount of sense for Derek Norris because this is the only place that I think he was going to go where he has an opportunity to play 150 games this year. And if Derek Norris doesn't play 150 games this year, there's no way he gets back into a groove of any kind.
Yeah, and that's the kicker. That's why the Rays made so much sense. The Rockies and Cardinals were also mentioned, but I mean, you don't want to play second fiddle to Yachty. Yachty is he's a horse. He's a freaking machine. You know, everyone looks like Alex Ovechkin in the NHL is kind of a robot. So is Yadier Molina. I mean, you get back there, it's just, look, here's what he's going to do. He can still, put his legs in positions that makes my groin hurt. I mean, I don't know how a guy that big and, just that solid behind the plate can get into this thing where he basically sits on a leg and has his other leg, his right leg kicked out 90 degrees away from his body, but he does, and he's fantastic at it. That's why, so a guy like Derek Norris who has a decent track record of performance in Major League Baseball, going to sit behind a future Hall of Famer in Yadier Molina, he doesn't need to learn the position. He needs to get back into a groove playing the position that he has shown that he can do effectively, and going to a team where he had that ability to play on a consistent basis with a decent staff to show, hey, I can come in here, I can work with the staff, I can learn from the staff, I can make them better. Because the question right now, I think also for Rays fans is, do you want Derek Norris to bond so well and work so well with Archer or Odorizzi that instead of making it, man, we have a guy now who's really working with them, they're clicking, it's a great duo, to, hey guys, see how good Archer's pitching? You want to trade for him? How much is it going to cost? And then all of a sudden, instead of it being a good thing where, man, he came in here and he got our pitchers going and everything's grooving, it was, he got them grooving and we got a great price for him. See ya. So Either way, if he can still do that, it's a great thing for him. It is, like you said, the only way that he is going to have a chance to sniff a continuous long-term starting role. This year is a make-or-break year, in my opinion, to him, because catchers, like football players, can be a very short-lived position, because once you kind of lose it, unless you can show that you're consistent, there's no guarantee you're going to get anything back on a consistent basis ever again.
Right. So, while we're talking about contract extensions and homecomings and
the AL East.
And fiery play, and the AL East, looks like John Gibbons is going to get extended, or has been extended now to 2019 with a club option in 2020.
A deal is basically finished according to sources. Should probably be announced, I would say, before the end of spring, but that's good. It gives him some security. It gives the ball club, a sense of kind of solidification, if you will. Shows that everything's kind of staying cohesive, and that's a good cohesive unit for the next 2 or 3 seasons.
Right, and we're talking about a manager who's kept the Blue Jays above 500 since 2013, and has an AL East title with him. So I think that this is good for the Blue Jays. I think it's good for John Gibbons, and continuity is important, especially in the manager role. So when you have a new manager coming in and you're changing styles of play, yearly, it's not as important to have a manager, the same manager year after year in baseball as it is in football, because now you're talking about schemes and different defensive or offensive outlooks. Baseball is baseball. Shift is a shift, but having a manager who knows when to shift, when not to shift, how to shift, and how to run
the Red Sox. Yeah, well, look at the Red Sox. You go from Tito, where he kind of just lost control of the clubhouse, to Bobby Valentine, who just the clubhouse hated him, and you bring in John Farrell, and what happens is they win a freaking World Series that year. So, yeah, like you said, there is definitely not the same requirement, if you will, but, yeah, they definitely hold a very heavy piece in that locker room.
Right. So good for John Gibbons, good for the Blue Jays. Continuity is important. So I think
he's a fiery manager. Yeah, and
right,
he's a fiery
right.
manager. I mean, he
plays
fights
with
for his
emotion.
players. Yeah, he does. I mean, he manages smart, but he's not afraid to get out there and get in the way of guys. And he also knows that if a guy shoots his mouth off and gets himself tossed, that hey, you made your bed, you sleep in it. And we've seen kind of both sides of that. There was one, I think, a season or two ago where Joey Bats got tossed in the middle of an at bat after he had fouled the pitch off, and he was chirping at Jerry Meals about a pitch, like 2 pitches prior. And he gave him, it wasn't like one of those 6-foot leashes you have for your dog. It was one of those, hold it and he can just run until you press the button. And he gave him, and he let him just run. And finally, Jerry never pressed the button. Jose just kind of ran out of leash, and he got dumped in the middle of an AB. And Gibbons comes out there and just kind of walks like, let's go. You're an idiot. You kind of earned this one. But we've also seen where he comes out on rough calls, things where he feels like his team's getting slighted. And he got tossed 2 or 3 times in like a 10-day period a season or two ago. And, you kind of like, my gosh, man, it makes you wonder, what is his relationship like with umpires? How much leeway, how much respect does he have? But then again, Brian Price was the same way, the skipper for the Reds. And I've heard from some big league umpires that he is one of the most respected guys because he's fair. He is respected. He treats guys well. And if he comes out, okay, he's going to do his managerial thing. And I think that, like you said, coming into a team who struggled mightily for many years, really didn't have any, they were on the bottom for a long time, and then they did the Burley thing and the R.A. Dickey thing, and, were trying to kind of revamp themselves. And, hey, he's gone 644 and 614 over parts of 9 seasons as the Blue Jays manager. Like you said, 3 consecutive winning seasons. And 2 postseason bids in the last 2 straight with ALCS losses. And there's a possibility they'll see the ALCS again, and they could make I think they could definitely give the Indians a run in the ALCS for a World Series bid if the divisions work out where those 2 meet in the championship series.
I agree. And I think that the Blue Jays have, at this point, with Joey Bats nailed down and some other pieces getting put into play, I think that there's an opportunity for them to do that. I think that they have a decent upside to this season, but we'll get to that later. That's something that we're definitely going to talk about. The whole idea of being able to get into the United States on a visa has been a pretty hotly contested issue here the last couple of months. And whether it's for political reasons or other reasons, there's been a lot of talk about being able to get in the United States as a foreigner. And sometimes you just can't get into the United States because you do something monumentally stupid and you get caught. And Jung-Ho Kang is one of those people. Kang got a DUI in Korea, and now not his first DUI, by the way.
No,
and
he has a DUI in Korea and in the U.S. He has 2, and there's a report he may have another in another country.
Right. So now he has been denied a work visa probably due to another DUI, and may not be playing this year for the Pittsburgh Pirates, which doesn't just hurt his ability to earn money as a ball player, but this hurts the Pirates.
Big time. And this is coming from Sungmin Kim, a writer for Korean baseball. Actually, I believe lives in Seoul, the capital of South Korea, and said, per Korean reports, this is a tweet sent out March 24th, so 2 days ago, and actually I'll read both tweets. Per Korean reports, Jung-Ho Kang was not granted the visa to enter the United States. Chances of playing with the Pirates this year got cloudy. Report also stated that there is a suspicion that Kang may have been convicted of drunk driving in a third country other than Korea and the U.S. And there also was, I'm not sure when this report happened, but he was also once investigated for a sexual assault. That case fell apart when the investigators struggled to find the victim. So again, we're not placing blame and saying that he committed that assault, but there was an investigation for it, and the investigation never really came to fruition because they if there was a victim, they could never find that victim, so there was really no answers there. The problem is you got a guy here who's a third baseman hitting .273 in the last 2 years with 36 dingers and knocking in 120. And he's 29 years old. He had a 4-year deal when he came stateside in 2015. We know that players from the eastern part of the world always end up coming over later in their career, later in age. But, I mean, this was a guy who he was solid. So the question now is, can David Freese, who, I mean, I thought back in 2011 that David Freese was going to be a mainstay in Major League Baseball for years to come. And then once the Cardinals got rid of him, it was just like, dang, man. Like, you fell off. Well, now he's got a possibility here to play third base with Kang not being stateside to play for the Pirates. So this could be something that could be big for him, but this could be absolutely detrimental to Kang's career in baseball, period, from this point on.
And to the Pirates, because we're talking about a guy who gets on base a lot, who comes across the plate a lot. I mean, he did knock in 120 RBI, but he also crossed the plate 105 times in those 2 years. So this is a guy who, on a ball club where Andrew McCutchen is struggling mightily to not look like he took a short walk off a long walk off of a short pier in baseball terms, and where maybe Sterling Marte is going to be the guy. When you lose a guy like this who can not only hit but who also can get on base and who can play third base decently well, then this is going to hurt the team. And I talk about this every time I hear about a professional athlete or a celebrity of any kind, or any person who is what I like to call comfortably well off getting a DUI.
It's a pretty fair assessment there. Yeah, I like that.
Kang has gotten $5 million in pay in the last 2 years, $2.5 million a year. There's absolutely no excuse for him not having a designated driver. He can afford a taxi. He can afford an Uber. He can afford a private driver in a private car if that's what he wants. There's absolutely no excuse for this. It's not just irresponsible, it's dangerous. And I, for one, applaud the State Department for saying, no, you drive drunk in your country, you drive drunk in our country. You're not going to put citizens at risk, their lives at risk, because you want to go out and have fun. So stay in your country and do whatever you want.
Now, he had 2 additional DUIs on his record. Let me repeat. He has 2 DUIs on his record, and he was still able to get a visa in 15 and 16. Now, there is a report that there was a December 2nd DUI arrest, and he was sentenced to 8 months in jail for that DUI. However, that jail sentence was suspended, so not sure really what that means that way. But Pirates GM Neil Huntington did finally address this past Wednesday, and he said, quote, "We're to a point in time where it's unrealistic to think Jung Ho is going to be ready for opening day. We remain optimistic we're going to get him here hopefully sooner rather than later. Now the challenge is if we don't, if it takes some time, we've built this club and feel good about the guys we have here," end quote. The one thing I want to know, and we're probably never going to find this out, and it's obviously much more from a GM side, but what does that do for his contract? I have to imagine being a player who is an international player playing in the big leagues, and obviously that most contracts have an insurance policy and things built in, but I would hope at least, per MLB bargaining rules and all that if he's not there, he doesn't get paid. I don't know how that's going to work. It's something I'm curious about, and I would love to find out. And we'll try and find out for you guys. But it makes you wonder if he's under contract and the only reason he isn't there is because he can't get a visa, do the Pirates end up still being on the hook for the guaranteed contracts that Major League Baseball players garner?
Well, that's a good question. And I think that this is a situation that's going to go a long way towards deciding things like that. This is something that Major League Baseball has to look at, and they have to take a long, hard look at it, right? There's a situation, there's a way of doing things in place for players who are in the United States and have issues like this. There are punishments and that sort of thing in place. But what do you do when this occurs outside of the purview of not only Major League Baseball, but U.S. law, right? Now, U.S. law can dictate, no, you can't come back in the country. 3 DUIs is too many, stop it. And that's one thing. But how now are the Pirates going to deal with the, $2.5-3 million that he should have been getting paid to play this year, right? How does that work? Is his contract still guaranteed? Because if this was an injury, he would still get paid. So I don't know.
So this is something I'm reading on CBS Sports as I was trying to kind of I was just trying to just figure out what this is supposed to be. And apparently the Pirates did place Jung-Ho Kang on the restricted list earlier this month, which indicates they expect him to miss most likely the start of the regular season. This is before, I believe, the visa issue happened. And now the Major League Baseball restricted list is used for players who can't play because of things that they have done, like arrests, family things, and that kind of stuff. So he will not be paid, and he won't collect any service time while on that list. So if he's not going to be able to accrue service time and he isn't going to be paid while on the restricted list, plus he doesn't count against the team's 25 or 40-man rosters, my assumption would be you keep everything there, you keep him on that list, he's not counting against your rosters, and you don't pay him anything. That's what it looks like to me, is how it's going to happen in this case, because the original list placement appears to have been done because of the DUIs or some other actions that he has done that the club felt that he should be restricted prior to being able to start the season. So I think, again, this is coming from someone who isn't that positive. I think that's how it's going to go. No.
Well, that's a smart move on the part of the Pirates, to be honest.
Yeah.
Because, in my opinion, I think a player who creates problems like that for himself probably should forego money. And I think that's really where you hit players and really make them realize that these are the wrong things to do. But I have a question for you. Mike Trout the other day was quoted as making a comment that, hey, what if, just like baseball players have to get back into the swing of things at the beginning of the year, so do umpires. Major League umpires have jobs just like everyone else. They don't umpire all year, all month, every day. They have jobs. They have other things that they go and do in the off season, as anybody else should. But
no, they don't. They are actually one of the few officials that actually get paid. They are paid consistently. From once they make the big leagues, they have a consistent check. They're covered beneficially. It's not like the NFL where they have separate jobs, and then come in and no, they're compensated very well, 6-figure salaries, and they're basically given that time to kind of recoup. And a lot of guys either will do things the umps care charity, which we hope to talk about another time, or obviously umpire school. But no, they get to kind of just kick back for a little bit.
My point is that they're not umpiring in the offseason, right? There's not
right.
They're not doing fall ball.
Right. Yeah.
They're not doing the Arizona Fall League. I mean,
the big league guys know, but a lot of the minor league guys actually will, believe it or not.
Okay, but a lot of the minor league guys are getting paid nothing, and they're either going to umpire in the offseason or they're going to get a job in the offseason because they have to live.
Yes.
So
correct.
Just like ball players, who obviously don't have to get a job in the offseason to live, or do anything in the offseason if they don't want to, just like they have to get sort of back.
Maybe they want to drink and drive. Wait, is that too soon?
Not if they want to come back in the United States.
Moving on.
Just like ball players have to get back into the swing of baseball, so do umpires. They have to get back into game shape. They have to get back into the day in, day out grind of 162 game season. And then there's these kids who don't get to see a lot of time in major league games, who spring training would be a great opportunity for them to do that, just like it's a great opportunity for minor league ball players to get an opportunity to play against major league guys. And so Mike Trout said, well, wait a minute. What if the major league guys kind of took their time getting back into it like the major league ball players do, and we let these younger A or double A umpires catch a few end-of-the-game innings and let them get some major league time. And apparently, baseball officials think that Mike Trout is a genius. What do you think?
It's not going to happen. And I don't say that in a way to be kind of, condescending to Mike Trout. I appreciate what he's saying here, but you already have that. You already have guys in Double-A and mainly Triple-A who are invites to spring training. That's why you see at the tail end of spring training guys who are wearing a major league shirt with no numbers on it. You see guys you haven't heard of before, and you see them tossing managers because they're not going to take, they're going to try and kind of make a mark for themselves. So we saw Mike Scioscia get tossed. We've seen Mike Matheny get tossed. Been a couple of different ejections later on in spring training by younger umpires who don't have any big experience. The thing is, what's the point? So we both have been to our fair share of spring training games. If you go to a spring training game, the first, second week of spring training, do you really give two hoots about staying into the 7th, 8th, and 9th inning to watch?
If I go to a spring training game, the first or second week of spring training, I'm probably gone by the 5th.
Now, when you say gone, are we talking like you're not in the park or you're just slobber knockered?
Both.
Okay.
Though I'm not driving.
Okay. So then what's the point of putting single A and double A umpires into a game where, how is that big league experience if they're seeing guys who are from single A and double A? There's no experience there. It makes no sense. Now I understand the idea that for the big league guys, they're thinking, yeah, I don't want this, rookie, schlub who can't seem to stop a baseball and, lets me get hit, which thankfully we haven't seen, because I haven't seen many guys being injured or getting hit early on in the year. But then once you're getting deeper into, deeper into spring training where guys are going 5, 6, 7 innings, that's when as an umpire, you want to be out there because you want to see these guys, the speed's getting faster, everything's getting right down to the wire for what's going to happen in the regular season. Do you want to be giving up those late game reps to young guys just because? They already have backfields. It's where I had a chance to do games at the Nationals last year. It's on the backfield, on the low A fields, the double A fields, the rehab fields. That's where I was when I had a chance to do it when those minor league guys had left and were going to get out their physicals and get ready for their start of their season, and they needed some last few games for their low A guys, and Bronson Arroyo is rehabbing. I'm on a backfield, and it was great. But that's what they're there for. Those guys are trying to develop to make it into double A, to make it from double A to triple A. And once you do, and once you earn that, and maybe you get a chance to be a fill-in, a call-up umpire to work in the big leagues, then you're going to get an invite to spring training. You are going to get invited to the Arizona Fall League. It is an invitation. It is a big deal because it is still overseen by Major League Baseball and and the umpire evaluator. So you're going to get those invites, and you're going to have a chance to prove yourself in big situations. So I like what Mike Trout is trying to say, but this isn't something where you can just throw a guy in here and, all right, well, I'm going to try this now. No, at best, what you'll see in spring training is that the base umpires will rotate. Every 3 innings, they'll go from first to second, second to third, and third to first, or however they decide they want to rotate. But they'll move around the bases to get themselves, as many reps as possible with different situations and refresh the rotations and, where I need to be, reading the baseball, reading the field, that kind of stuff. But I get what he's trying to do here, but this is already kind of taken into account in the way that umpires are invited to spring training, and the minor league guys who taught at the umpire school are working those backfields. Guys that I know that they're working single A, that are working low A, that are double A promotable. They're already out here working those backfields, so this is kind of a moot point to me. I mean, unless you are saying, hey, let's give these guys who have been umpiring for 2 or 3 years a chance to get on TV and call a game in big league spring training. Well, once we're at this point in spring training, a week and a half out, these guys want polished umpires. They're trying to put the finishing touches on the little things that they need to do to get ready for a long 162-game season. They don't have time for some young kid who just wants to have a chance to make a mark and say, I got in, to come in for a game when, no, they need everything to be down to the fraction of an inch. If that ball is a half inch off the plate, it better be a ball. It can't be a strike. So I get what he's saying here, but to me, it just doesn't work. Doing it later in spring doesn't make sense, and doing it early in spring is already what they're doing now in the backfield. So why do it?
What about doing it early in spring and letting them get in? What about doing it early in spring and letting them get in the first 2 or 3 innings, and then letting the older guys come out and take over? Then they play with major league ball players early in spring when it doesn't really matter, but they get the reps with the major league guys.
Then if that's the case, then they'd be out there for the entire game. Because why does a big league guy want to come in to watch non-big league players play ball? Now, I get that they will do that at the tail end of a game, but the idea is, okay, we're going to see big league players, big league stuff. We're going to see what's kind of coming. We're going to try and kind of pick up the game speed a little bit, and the game's going to, we know the game's going to change. It's going to get a little bit more sloppy. It's not going to be quite as crisp. I don't know of any umpire that would want to walk into that. Let me ask you this. If you and I were umpiring together, if I pulled you to the dark side, okay, and we're seeing a varsity JV scrimmage, hey, Chris, you and I have been doing this for 5 years. We're going to give these first and second year guys the beginning of the varsity game. Then you and I can come in when the varsity guys are starting to come out, and we'll just take the JV and the middle school the rest of the way through. Are you good with that?
I get it. It makes sense. I guess just from the standpoint of wanting to see these guys get an opportunity in spring to at least see major league stuff, as an opportunity to get them into the mindset of, hey, this is the kind of stuff that you're going to need to watch trying to move forward in your career. But
they will during the season too. I mean, we talked about, I had a chance to call pitches for a World Series champion in Bronson Arroyo, who's rehabbing, who's now signed with the Reds. You're going to have guys like Francisco Rodriguez, other guys that come down. You're going to have hitters like Jonathan Lucroy, A-Rod, Jose Bautista. You're going to have a chance. Jose Fernandez, I had a chance to watch in single A. You're going to have a chance to see all this stuff. Now, granted, yeah, they're rehabbing. They may not be on top of their game, but they're a lot better than what you've been used to seeing, during the majority of your single A or double A season. So it's still there. Just unless you get an option like here with the WBC where you have 2 or 3 big league umpires who are going to umpire. Right? We had Rob Drake, Lance Barksdale, and Eric Cooper. We saw 2, with the first 2 rounds, it was 4-man crews. So we saw usually 2 MLB guys on every crew. Teddy Barrett, Quinn Walcott, all those different guys. Hunter Wendelstedt was out there. So they have these AAA fill-ins who are there to get that time on the field, to get themselves ready, because once these guys begin their vacation, hey, you're up. And these AAA guys are not a part of the umpire CBA. So they don't get treated the same way as the big league guys do. They don't get the same pay. They don't get the vacation time. They bounce from crew to crew depending on where they're needed, and then they may have a week or 2 in AAA, and then they're back up to the big leagues again. But these guys also may never see the big leagues full time in their career. They may just have a chance to do 3, 4, 700 games filling in, but never make the big league staff. So I get it, but to me, as hard as those jobs are to come by, you got to cut your teeth and you got to earn it to make it there. It's a big deal to get your number. It's a big deal to have just that MLB logo on your shirt pocket. If you can get that logo plus 2 numbers or 1 number on your right shirt sleeve, you're doing something right. And if you're doing something right, you're going to get there. And if you're not, hey, you may be a great umpire in college. You may be a great umpire in high school, but you just may not be ready for the big leagues. And that's something that should be saved, I think, for those guys who have been there. And I know it sounds kind of odd coming from me with my experience. I was fortunate. And I got to do it, a couple of times behind the dish and 1 time with an actual 2 times with actual big leaguers. And it's coming from someone who's been there, man. It's a surreal experience. Everything, every single sense, everything was heightened. The ball sounds, louder. The bats crack better. But I'm also so focused that a 95 mile an hour fastball. I could track. Everything was just felt slower because I was so hell bent to not screw up and make an ass of myself. But it's something these guys need to earn, and I think it's great what Trout is saying. But I think that taking reps away from those big league guys who need that time to watch the game speed pick up so that they're ready for pace of play when they go to put the ball in play, you don't want to take that away from those guys. And they are the best in the world at what they do. And we saw that in the WBC, that the big league guys are undeniably the best at what they do.
I agree. So this is what I want to do. We don't have a whole lot of time left. You make a very good argument. We don't have a whole lot of time left, but what I want to do is I want to do picks. And here's how I want to do it. I want to go east to west, American League first, then National League. I want you to tell me who's gonna take the division and 1 team who could possibly contend for a wild card slot.
Go. So 1 wild card, not 2. Okay. I'm pretty much running chalk the way we did last year. I think the Red Sox win the American League. I think the Indians win the Central. I still think the Rangers win the West. I think they have better pieces. As far as who I'm pushing in for wild cards, I'll give you 2. I'll go Blue Jays and Astros.
Okay. Let me pull my list back up. I have taken a long, hard look. I have the Red Sox winning the East. I have the Indians winning the Central. I have the Astros winning the West.
Okay. I thought you might. I know we talked about it. I thought you might.
Right. I have the Mariners. And
okay.
I have the Mariners and the Jays running for wild card slots.
Interesting. I didn't think you were going to go Mariners there. I'm surprised that you're leaving the Rangers out completely.
I think their window's closing tightly. I think
okay.
it's
my worry with the Stros winning the division is that I want to know what McCullers is going to do, what that pitching staff's going to do before I can commit. So you legitimately kind of surprised me there. I thought you might pick the Astros, but the Mariners one really floored me. I'm impressed.
Okay, how about the National League?
Wow. The Scherzer finger kind of worried me until I read everything. Nats I still have winning the East. The Brewers, no, I'm just kidding. I just wanted to see what you were going to say. The Cubs are going to win the Central. And I think the Dodgers win the West. I do. I think Melanson is good, but there's still more pieces of that bullpen for San Fran. They've got to get figured out, and maybe they will. I have the Mets, and wow, that second wild card is going to be a bear.
Wide open.
It is. I'm going to go Mets and Giants just because I'm not quite sure what the Cardinals' rotation is going to do. I'm a little bit worried there. We'll see. I trust Matheny and that organization, but they struggled last year. We'll see how they do this year. It's going to be a bear trying to claw through the Central, and because of the way the scheduling works, it kicks them in the pants because they see the Cubbies a ton. So, yeah, I'm going to go Nats, Cubs, Dodgers. So, again, chalk it up from last year. And then the Mets and the Giants.
So we're almost completely in agreement here, which is I think is unprecedented.
Yeah.
The only thing that I'll say is that there is a very real possibility that the Nats and the Mets are going to come down to a playoff game.
I agree. That I think I'm looking more offensively. Well, actually, I'm looking more rotationally because when it comes to offense, I think the Mets might actually have better offense. With Cespedes, you've got Daniel Murphy. I think they're going to find a little bit more. I'm expecting that Bryce Harper is going to show back up again, and I think Adam Eaton is going to be a very important grab for them. So that's why. But yeah, I think it will be. It was an 8-game spread to end the season last year, and that's with almost all 3 of their arms gone. Everyone's healthy and they're ticked off. It's going to. I mean, Thor is going to be bringing the lightning. It's going to be one hell of an NL East.
Watching Syndergaard on the hill yesterday, fan 5 batters in 6 innings, and the kind of power that he was doing it with, makes me think that not only is he ready to go, but he's upset. Cespedes is going to be ready. Cespedes is going to be ready to earn that contract extension. And
Matt Harvey's got something to prove. And Matt Harvey's got something to prove big time.
Yeah, he does. He does. So just in the interest of making it interesting, I'm going to go Mets.
Okay.
In the East, Cubs in the Central, obviously.
So we're just flipping the East and the wild card. You're going Mets and Nats and flip flopping. Okay.
Right, and then the Dodgers in the West.
Really, I'm impressed. You actually picked the Dodgers to win the West. Really?
So it comes down to 3 simple things. And those 3 simple things are Clayton Kershaw, Rich Hill, and Kenta Maeda. Throw in Scott Kazmir and Julio Urias, and that is the best starting 5 in the West, hands down, American or National League.
Yeah. And that's the kicker is your 3 slot with Shark is shaky, and your 5 slot is a question mark.
Right.
So I'm surprised that you did it, but I'm impressed.
I believe
I'm impressed.
I believe that National League West is going to be hotly contested by the Giants. I think it's going to be close, but I think that the Giants are probably going to top out at 88 or 89 games, and I think that the Dodgers are probably going to win 91 or 92.
So
88 or 89. What's that? So
you see the Dodgers basically chalking last year at 91 and 71. You think the Giants pick up maybe 1 or 2 games and go to 89 and 74 or 73 instead of 87, 75.
Right. And I think that there's always room, there's always the possibility that the Giants could pick up 5 or 6 games and get into the 90s if Mark Melancon can do the things that we hope that he can do. And that would have had they had a closer who could win 9, not give up 9 games in the 9th inning, they would have finished in the 90s last season.
Exactly. So and that's yes, I was going to say that's the big thing is those 4 games separating the Dodgers and the Giants. You can chalk at least 4 of those to Casilla. There's no doubt, no question. So yeah, there definitely is. It's definitely there, and it's going to be a great rivalry. I think we're in for one heck of a season, and I think the NL Central is going to be dramatic.
Yeah, but Will Smith going down to Tommy John puts the question mark on that bullpen for me. That's why I think Dodgers in the West, Giants in the wild card, probably the second wild card to the Nationals, who I think is going to take the first wild card slot.
Nice, and of course, all these picks are reserved for change at the trade deadline, and that's also when we get into postseason in June.
The Mets are going to. I just think the Mets are going to win 97 games this season.
Really? You pick up 10 games? Wow. Okay.
They're hungry, and their pitchers are back, and their pitchers are ready to go.
Well, yeah. I mean, we thought it was going to be last year after they lost to Kansas City. So yeah.
So I think the Mets are going to win 95 to 97 games. But I also think that the Cubs are only going to win. I don't think the Cubs are going to get to triple digits this year.
Really? Now, I will say I did see something that Steven Matz had I don't know if it was an injury or some discomfort So that could be a small concern. He has some elbow irritation, some soreness. I don't think it's going to be anything huge, but his status for the opener is a little bit up in the air. And let's not forget, really the wild card last year for the Mets is in Atlanta now. And that's Bartolo Colon. Laugh all you want, but Big Boy, I mean, he kept that season afloat. So I am very surprised at that, but you actually have some credibility now, so high five.
Huh.
So guys, again, another show. We have had a blast. I know Chris is. I know after you are picking up yourselves off the floor after hearing Chris pick the Dodgers to win the West, I will let him give you some parting words, just so those of you who are worried for his sanity or his health, he can put that to rest. Maybe. I don't know if he will, but Chris,
guys, it's going to be another interesting week of baseball. It's been another interesting week of baseball. It's been a lot of fun being able to come on here and talk to you guys about baseball week in and week out, especially the things that go a little bit beyond baseball. We have fun doing this every week. We really appreciate you guys tuning in and listening to us. Again, hit us up on Twitter at @OOLeftField. Hit us up on Facebook, the Out of Left Field Baseball Community, as well as the Out of Left Field hosted by Chris and Graham page. And if you really, really want to just go off on me for something that I've said, or congratulate Graham for his upcoming nuptials, then go ahead and shoot us an email at ooleftfield@gmail.com. And we'll see you next week, where I'm sure we'll have more stories coming straight out of left field.